Hello, everyone. I'm looking at the chat and all the people are joining us from around the world, and it's so exciting. I'm so glad you could join us this morning. Greetings from a very rainy New York. I'm just so glad to brighten up my morning with coffee and our wonderful audience and our original great guest, who is Merve Hickok, who will be joining us for a conversation in a couple of minutes. So I'm Mia Dan. I am the founder of Women in AI Ethics, the host for this webinar. And just a couple of housekeeping items for also a quick introduction to everyone who is not familiar with our work. The Women in AI Ethics started in 2018 with a list that I published, which was the 100 Brilliant Women in AI Ethics list. It came as a shock to people. There were more than 10 women working in this space. And today we have with us a guest who is one of the people who's a pioneer in this work. And she has been doing the work in AI ethics long before it became cool. So before we introduce our wonderful guest, who I'm very excited about, let me just share a few housekeeping items. One is we have Dwight Brown and Gabrielle Rao, who will be helping us with the event today. If you have any questions, reach out to Gabrielle. And yeah, and also we will record this session. We always get this question. We do post all our recordings on our YouTube channel, so definitely check it out. We have sessions from our previous events as well, all online, all free. This is the first in a series of AI expert chats that we are kicking off this year. And I used to do AI Twitter chats back in the day when Twitter was still Twitter. But since then, we took a break and we're restarting it because there is so much great work being done by women and non-binary folks in this space that we thought, yes, why don't we bring all these women together, introduce them to you, because we need the inspiration, right? Because there's so much going on in the world, which is out of our control. Every day there's a new crisis. I want to make sure that you all know the women who are working very hard to keep it safe and make sure that artificial intelligence benefits all of us, not just the select few. So let me start off with an introduction to our guest today. Merve Hickok is the founder of AIethicist.org, and her work focuses on, and has focused on for a very long time, on AI and fundamental rights, democratic values, as well as social justice. She's also the president and research director at CAIDP, which is the Center of AI and Digital Policy. Merve is the OG. She has gone toe-to-toe with some of the most powerful men in the world. So I do want to ask more about that and share, and have her share some of her experiences with you right on the front lines of this battle. Our mission to make AI more ethical and make it more inclusive. She wears many hats. She's also a lecturer at the School of Information and the responsible data and AI advisor at Michigan Institute for Data Science. She's also faculty at the Ford School of Public Policy. She also works with several nonprofits. This is a way of giving back, and Women in AI Ethics is one of them. She volunteers her time on the board of Women in AI Ethics, and we are so excited to have her. Welcome, Merve.
I am more than excited. I'm beaming with excitement right now. Thank you so much for having me, Mia. And thanks for everyone who's on the call, who's watching us live from all over the world, as I'm seeing that from the chat. Can I just say, I know I told you earlier, but I know my 2024 will go perfect. It will go beautifully if I'm starting the year with Mia. For some of you who might not be familiar with our relationship, we call each other sisters, and I know from the bottom of my heart that she's always there and happy to be part of this community.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, Marvin and I met back in the day when AI ethics was such a nascent field, right? So I'll tell you about the controversy that happened when the list was published. There were two controversies. One was people were so surprised there are more than 10 women working in AI ethics. So that was one. That's like, how no, there are no women in AI. There are no women in technology. There's so few. There are like 10, right? So we put this list of 100 women, and people are so shocked. The second controversy was around the name. There were a lot of academics who were concerned about the naming. They said it should be AI and ethics. It should be ethics of AI. It should be ethical AI. And ethic went on and on and on. And finally, I'm just thinking about you. You had already pioneered the space. You already have your site, aiethicist.org, when I was starting a Women in AI Ethics. And you've been doing that work for a while. So I'd love for you to start off with what is the origin story? How did you get started in this space long before anyone was even talking about it?
Well, thank you so much for giving me the chance to explain that. I used to, in a former life, I used to be in corporate world. So I was in charge of Bank of America Merrill Lynch's recruitment technologies globally. So anywhere from outside of US, to be honest. And I was wearing a second hat, diversity recruitment, diversity campus recruitment. So on one hand, I was going from one college campus to another to get more women, more minority students, whatever that means in any context, to be interested in investment banking, which is similar to tech, is very male oriented. And I was also in charge of the technology itself, and this is beginning of 2010s. And I started hearing from the students that we were trying to attract, saying, hey, some of the processes and some of the things that you put in place as an industry, not necessarily the Bank of America, but as an industry is putting obstacles on our way. You're putting like video interviews, but we don't have broadband at home. We don't have a quiet place at home to have these interviews or such and such. So it grew out of some of those conversations, and recruitment, like bias in recruitment tools, was a relatively new subject back then. So I asked the question, if it's happening in recruitment, if it's having this effect on the students, where else it is happening. Turns out that bias in AI is all over the place. So I resigned from my corporate job, founded aiethicist.org, and it really was born out of this intention to share my research at the time, the stuff that I was reading to get myself more informed, to advocate. So AI Ethicist is one of the first global repositories of AI principles, AI governance frameworks, toolkits, etc. And it was just meant to provide more resources to people coming into this field, so they didn't have to go down this like rabbit holes that I had back in the time.
And we so appreciate you doing that because it definitely set us off on such a good pathway to have a lot of that work already being done. Uh, Even though it was in the background and people always look at the glitz and the glamour, but sometimes they miss the hard work that goes on behind the scenes. And often is women like yourself who are leading the way, women in our community who are working so hard on these issues. So now in your role as your current role, president of the CAIDP, which is pretty powerful, and you have been up against some of, again, the same panels as some of the most powerful men on the planet. You were in front of the, I still remember I was beaming with so much pride and joy, and always have so much respect for you. You were on this, in front of the congressional hearing, and same panel as Eric Schmidt and other people who are very well known and acknowledged, deservedly so. And how did you start in this role? What is the focus of your work at CAIDP? Can you please share with us some more details on that?
Thanks so much for mentioning that as well. And I was extra excited because I was the only woman in that panel, not only against some really powerful men pushing their own, agendas and businesses, but it also happened to be on March 8th, International Women's Day. So it was an extra honor to be in that first congressional hearing talking about AI. We've since then had a lot of other congressional, testimonies and conversations, but that was the one asking, are we ready for AI and should we regulate? So with that background, let me, come back to Center for AI and Digital Policy. Extremely proud and extremely honored to, to be one of the co-founders of this organization. And now the president. I will have a shout out to our founder, Mark Rotenberg. He is, for those of you who are not familiar with his amazing work over the decades, he has been one of the leading allies, leading advocates in the space. And it was really, him and a few others, the co-founders, coming together a few years back and asking, who is not in the room, right? We're looking at these AI policy conversations, AI regulatory conversations, and you're seeing the same faces again and again and again, and in US, in Europe, and beyond. And you see the same person sitting in 15 different, councils and advisory boards, and like, there are a lot of people, a lot of voices not represented. So one, let's look at CAIDP. Let's build CAIDP as an education independent research and education institution. So we bring more voices. We train future AI policy leaders, but also as a civil society organization, our focus is to ensure AI policies and digital policies at large promote a better society, more fair, more just, more accountable, and the underlying, North Stars, or higher North Stars rather, are human rights, democracy, and rule of law. So if we stick to human rights and democracy and rule of law, what does that look in AI policy and regulation? So since then, we've been incredibly fortunate about people who wanted to engage, who wanted to go to our trainings. I can speak a bit further about that later. And who were just like so passionate about the mission, this human rights and democratic values in AI policy mission, that we just kept expanding and expanding. And we're in a pretty influential position right now globally, thanks to our community.
It is so incredibly impressive and powerful because I've seen the evolution and how you worked so hard to get to this position, the influential position. Can you talk a little bit more about how does your work influence trustworthy AI and policy and regulation? Because that's such a focus area right now, because that is going to set us on the pathway for more successful development and design of technologies that represent, like you said, all of us, not a few handful of rich and powerful people, but something that's representative of all of humanity. Could you elaborate a little bit more about how you work and how you influence?
Yeah, absolutely. So first part was creating a common language on AI policy and AI governance regulations in general. And like I said, for us, it was the language of human rights and democratic values. So first and foremost, we use our AI policy clinics, our global AI policy clinics, to share some of the major AI policy frameworks happening around the world, such as UNESCO AI recommendations, Council of Europe AI Draft AI Treaty, EU AI Act, Caribbean and Latin America Roadmap, you name it, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, to get all of our participants in our clinics and whoever is interested in our work to use the common language and norms of human rights. And when you base your your work and the language on human rights, such as right to privacy, expression, association, remedy, fair trial, as well as labor rights, migrant rights, disability rights, gender rights, right? it becomes this very powerful language and common framework that people can understand in their own life how that is impactful. So we then use that language, those frameworks, perspective to keep governments accountable for their practices, as well as for future policy and regulations. And one of our flagship work is this index called AI and Democratic Values Index. In a couple of months, we're going to publish the fourth edition, fourth year. And we'll look at the AI policies of 75 countries. And there's a huge, our participants, clinic participants, academic network that is just pouring their energy and research into this work. But we look at, what does a government commit to in terms of its AI policy? What does it say about human rights? What does it say about democratic values? And then compare that against what they actually do. Like, do they walk the talk, right? And we influence that trustworthy AI policymaking, that commitment to human rights, by showing that gap between commitment and practice. You say you respect human rights, but what kind of AI tools are you using as a government, and are you walking the talk? So that is one of our most powerful mechanisms as well.
That is so incredibly powerful. To your point, it's one thing to just talk the talk because everybody's so easily saying the right things, right? So easy to do that. But then to reconcile that with the actual deeds, whether known or unknown, right? They adopting technologies that can then undermine the same values that they're preaching. So the work you're doing is so powerful, and especially time. This conversation is so timely because I'll take a conversation with you any day of the week because it just makes my week better, my day better, and it gives me hope. It inspires me that yeah, we are working towards a better world, and you're doing so much of the work there. Also the fact that you do walk the walk in so many ways, and that you're especially this being an election year, the work that you're doing is so relevant, especially the use of AI technologies as they are being used to spread misinformation, propaganda, and undermine the basic tenets of democracy. So I'm so glad we have to be having this conversation for so many reasons. For folks who are just getting started, have joined us just now, or just getting started with Women in AI Ethics, couple of things. One is we do, this is our first kickoff for the AI Expert webinar that we are hosting every month. It's always on last Thursdays at 9 a.m. Eastern time. So every month, last Thursdays, grab your favorite drink, grab your coffee, come join us. We will introduce you to incredible women like Merve Hickok, who's here with us today. She's the president of CAIDP, but that's not her only role. She wears a lot of different hats. But if you, we will ask so many questions for Merve, and I want to ask all of them, but I also want to give you all an opportunity to ask her your questions. And she has kindly agreed to stay for a few extra minutes after the session ends at 10 a.m. Eastern. So just hang in there, pop your questions into Q&A. We will not be checking chat for any questions. So if you do have any questions, put it in the Q&A and we'll just pick it up from there. And once we stop recording, we will open it up, open mic. People can ask her questions directly to Merve. So that's that, with that brief interlude. Back to CAIDP and the work that you're doing. I feel like this is for the audience. Don't let the calm demeanor of Merve fool you. She is badass. She goes toe to toe, like I said, with the most powerful men in the world. And it was CAIDP's complaint that spurred an investigation into the FTC investigation into practices at OpenAI. And I'm very curious as to how did that come about? What was the genesis of the origin of the complaint? And how did that turn into this investigation of what you might say one of the most of an organization which is so much in the headlines and is headed up by some of and supported by some of the most powerful billionaires on the planet? Do share.
I will share, and I try to keep a calm manner because I breathe deep a lot, and coffee helps, I suppose. But how did the OpenAI complaint came about? So in mid-March, we made our intention because we were kind of concerned that there wasn't enough transparency with GPT-4 and ChatGPT. There was not enough transparency and documentation on how OpenAI collected and processed its training data. What was some of their assessments and thresholds for being comfortable to unleash such a powerful product on society globally. What kind of checks that they made, what were their risk assessment and governance methodology, and we were not comfortable with what we were seeing. So whatever we do in CAIDP, we do it very transparently, by the way. So mid-March, we publicized our intention to file this complaint on our website. We reached out to a lot of the leading voices in the space saying, what are you seeing? What are some of the different angles? What are your concerns? So we had a lot of feedback. So it's not only, me, Mark, and Christabel, etc., doing this work, but we actually had a lot of support for our work. And then we did a deep dive into OpenAI's own documents, right? So they published their security card, their system card, etc., and to see what they were sharing, what they were disclosing about the system. So end of March, we submitted our official complaint to Federal Trade Commission on OpenAI. It's a 46-page complaint, which was followed by several months of advocacy for FTC to open that investigation. Beginning of July, we submitted a supplement one because we wanted to capture all the developments that happened between March and July. And I'll mention that in a minute. And then mid-July is when FTC started that, sent the investigation letter to OpenAI. So it was like months of work, not only on the complaint, but advocacy, stakeholder engagement on our side. And we also worked with, this is what you're seeing in US, but we also have, partners, civil society organizations in Europe who also pushed us at the same day. We filed a complaint in March. European Consumer Protection Organization, BEUC, pushed it in Europe, asking individual member states and data protection agencies to look into OpenAI's practices. So you might have seen a number of data protection agencies coming up with moratoriums, bans, investigations in Europe as well. And at the end of the day, you have this agencies like Federal Trade Commission with significant investigative and enforcement powers, DPAs in Europe, who put out these guidelines, right? So you can't do this, you can't do that. So we looked at all the FTC powers as well as their guidance. We compared that against OpenAI's disclosed documents and then said, we think this goes against FTC guidance for deceptive practices, unfair business practices, as well as things like bias, algorithmic bias, transparency, privacy, public safety, children's safety, data protection, cybersecurity, etc. Hence our very long complaint. And then we submitted a supplement, the second supplement in October as well, because this is an ongoing thing. So we now have an original complaint plus 2 supplements and an ongoing FTC investigation. And what we are asking the FTC right now is to have this investigation in a timely manner and come up with a result before it's too late for society at large and businesses as well.
Thank you so much for walking us through that because I was always curious. We read this in the news, right? We see the headlines. There is so much that happens behind the scenes that the public doesn't know about. So I do appreciate that you're so transparent about what you do, where you stand, the way you work, and the work has so much impact, not just in where we are both based in the United States, but it has implications also in other countries because then they have a it feels like you're creating this roadmap for them also to follow that yes, this can be done, this is how you do it, and this is essentially all the work that we have already done that can help support that. So kudos to you, your team. We do need more transparency, we do need more pathways to making sure that open is truly open and it's not just a name only. So I appreciate that so much. We have so let's talk about the role of government. What many people don't realize, or maybe it's just me, belatedly I came to this realization, the government is a big customer of these services from the days of DARPA, right? If you think about, we wouldn't even have internet if it wasn't funded by, right, the defense department as much as. So there's always this conflict between government as not just enforcer of these rules, like when you talk about FTC, but at the same time, they have a lot of clout as being consumers and users and buyers of these technologies. And on that note, you have a book coming out on procurement practices because that's a huge lever, right? Because you're talking on one hand, you have these powerful billionaires running trillion-dollar companies. How do you even begin to start influencing them in other ways? And that's where I feel like your work is so important. Can you talk to us more about this book, which is not yet published? I'm very excited. I can't wait for it to be published. But this is who is the audience? What will it help us with? I know it's about procurement practices, but where do you see that helping governments make better decisions potentially as they consume or buy these technologies?
And spot on, Mia, on like how to help the governments and procurement professionals to embed trustworthy AI principles into actual practice, right? So that's actually a very lengthy title of the book as well. Uh, what I what I wanted to do with the book is first two objectives. One is governments have a duty to protect human rights and do no harm, right? So they have a duty to make sure whatever tools, processes, mechanisms that they use, it has to respect fundamental rights. It has to respect rule of law, administrative law, etc. But at the end of the day, they cannot put in place a system that will end up with adverse impact as discrimination or harms, even like bodily harms, etc. So that's one thing. It is their duty to make sure the systems that they procure, that they develop, is aligned with certain principles and legal requirements. The second is, as you mentioned, government is also happens to be the largest buyer, right? U.S. federal government, for example, is the largest buyer in the world. So how can you use that lever, that purchasing power, as a lever to ensure some practices, some norms, some principles are embedded in not only in your government procurement, public procurement, but also sets the expectations for the private sector in general, right? So it's like expectation setting and using your purchasing power. So I looked at a number of trustworthy AI principles, major frameworks, including the executive orders, UNESCO AI recommendations, OECD AI principles, etc. Did a NIST AI framework, did a crosswalk across those, where do they converge, where do they diverge, and then trying to explain within a procurement context, not at like high level principles, but what does that principle mean in essence within the procurement context? So trying to embed those principles. Because another thing I saw was you would be amazed how little research, academic research, is actually happening at the intersection of public procurement and AI systems. There's literally a handful. So it's either like this develop AI in a trustworthy manner, trustworthy AI development and design, and then on the other hand, trustworthy AI governance, etc. And something happens in the middle magically that these AI systems appear in an organization. God knows how they got in, how they got deployed. But I see that procurement as like that gatekeeping, that control function. So hopefully, if you make better judgment of these systems, better evaluation, verification of these systems at that stage, we can prevent public actors, public sector actors from deploying some of these harmful AI systems in the public sector. Because God knows there's now a whole long list of AI systems gone wrong in the public sector with significant harms from bankruptcy to suicides and families torn apart, etc. So this is not theoretical, it's not rhetorical, but actually happening.
Oh, oh my gosh. On so many levels, this resonates. First of all, I love you like a sister. But when you talk about these things, I'm like, so much work that you've put into it. You're always ahead of the curve. So my admiration for you just grows. Every time I talk to you, it's like tenfold more. This is complex work. This is complicated. Systems are not easy to navigate. You're talking about so many governmental organizations, and they sometimes don't even talk to each other. And like you said, like technologies just show up magically. I work on more on the corporate side, like with larger organizations, it's the same issue. Like they're adopting these technologies just willy-nilly. Somebody says, I want AI on my resume, and next thing they're going out there shopping. They're out there, right? They're shopping. Let me have this technology, let me have this. It's like kid in a candy shop. That's how AI is right now. And when you talk about governments, it has real impact on real people. Like you can lose your job to it can affect your like even your not just livelihood, your life. You can be
Yep.
incarcerated if it gets into the judicial system, which is being tested right now. The implications are scary, and it's just not. I don't think it's surprising that it tends to be women who are seeing all of this. Like, we are like this is like women like yourself, right? Who AI ethicist is not just a title or a buzzword you're putting out there. You're actually doing the hard work. And the challenge with a lot of that is it's not glamorous.
No,
A lot of this
and
work is not glamorous, it's behind the scenes. Oh,
not
please
not,
continue.
not at all. And I just wanted to like put one plug in. So for the book, I interviewed 22 people in several U.S. agencies, several U.S. departments. I think like 7 or 8 different U.S. departments, procurement professionals. Canada, United Kingdom, Belgium, Netherlands, Norway, Chile. And these were procurement professionals like deep in procurement of AI, right? So asking like what kind of guidelines, training, support, resources do you have? And in every single case, despite the geographical and jurisdictional differences, it was really the personal curiosity, personal passion, that sense of responsibility of these procurement professionals who were driving a bit more detailed evaluations, but otherwise they didn't have any government guidance, any training on AI, any lessons learned, sharing, community of practice, etc., or any you know any extra resources because they were doing this on top of everything else that they need to do for procurement, for public procurement, which is already crazy complicated as is. So shout out to those people who are trying to do this because of their sense of commitment and responsibility. But on the other hand, just in the US, 3 weeks ago, Government Accountability Office published this report saying there are 1,200, more than 1,200 current and planned use of AI in the civilian federal agencies federal departments in the US. So put military aside, put intelligence aside, in the civilian agencies, we have more than 1,200 current and planned use of AI, most of which we don't know. There are some disclosed in the AI registry. There might be some that don't have like rights impacting or impacting rights or high risk, but there's still a huge number that has gone through without robust evaluation.
Oh my gosh, that is so true. There are people trying to do the right thing, but you don't know what the right thing is because this is on top of everything else you do in your day job. And they may not have the expertise or the time to do it. So what you're doing is very powerful. And that is going to help not only, and again, that's a lever, right? That you're pulling, that if we try and get the right practices into these agencies at the point where these technologies are being reviewed, then that turns out like it can help so many people make the right decisions because because it all has a downstream effect on people who are going to ultimately be impacted by those technologies. And it's a scary number. The fact that now we can't even opt out, that even governments have these technologies without any kind of frameworking anyways, and then we need ways to protect our communities. We need ways to protect ourselves. So kudos to you for making this happen. And again, I also appreciate what you said about all the people doing the work, trying to do the right thing. They need the tools to be able to do that, which is why women in AI ethics exist, because we know the women who are doing all the work, we know the non-binary people doing the work, and we want to introduce that to our audience and even broader audience to say that this is the work being done and this is important. And I should also, as soon as the book comes out, we are going to have you back here for sure, because I want to read the book and I'm sure myself and the audience will have so many questions to you at that time as well. So we're starting off the year really well, but I'm going to make sure that we continue this momentum throughout. So folks, we do have a few more questions for Merve, and then I'll hand it off to the Q&A from the audience because we're already getting a few questions. What is your prediction? Like, I know I'm crystal balling. Everybody's putting out the projections, but this is the first month of the new year. Where do you see us going? Where do you see us headed? And do you have any words of advice, any thoughts about how people should be approaching some of these issues that we are seeing coming up over and over?
Future of AI policy and regulation in general. I stand by what I said in the testimony earlier in 2023. We need guardrails in place for these AI systems that impact our rights and freedoms, our access to resources and opportunities. And what has been great to see since then is a bipartisan support on the need for regulation, that many of the policymakers, lawmakers, staffers that we engage in CAIDP, understand the urgency and the need for these guardrails, and don't want to repeat mistakes of not regulating social media properly back in the time. So I think there is this understanding of, hey, we haven't done this as we should have back in the time. We are seeing all the negative impact of social media, positives, but there are also a lot of negative impacts on disinformation, misinformation, children's safety, etc. So there's a sense of not repeating that, which is great to see. The Biden administration has taken this on as a priority item, AI governance. So my prediction for AI policy and AI regulation, both in the US and EU or EU and beyond, is that we're going to see more regulations, which hopefully enable more transparency and independent oversight. Really excited about some of the AI policy and governance, developments happening in Latin America, Chile, Brazil, some amazing examples coming out of that. Really excited that African Union joined G20 to break that, or to break some of those homogeneous perspectives, and hopefully that is going to become another lever. But in a more operational sense, I think we need to, as a community, we need to demand more transparency, more accountability, more liability, because it is that demand for change. You need to come to a certain threshold for people to hear you, feel that pressure, and actually start doing something. So hopefully, with your help, with Women in AI Ethics, with our clinics, with many other amazing civil society organizations working in this space, that we continue to amplify those voices and demand.
Amen. You can definitely count on us. This is why we exist. This is why we are here. And this is important, right? People think about women in AI ethics, they see women and they're like, oh, this must be some feminist organization. And that's not to say we are not. We are always championing women's voices and want to put forth more women, elevate their voices. But at the same time, we do more than that, because what you're doing and what a lot of women in our community, actually, most of them are doing, is the work that is going to help all of humanity, which only makes us more safer, makes sure that we are thriving as a species, not just as like one of like one gender should not get to decide, or even within that gender, small group should not get to decide the future of humanity. Right? That's pretty much where we all come together. That when you talk about inclusion, we talk about diversity. We are not just talking race, gender. We're also talking about backgrounds, policymakers right now, right? That's where it is. Everything is, all roads are leading to policy regulation, because this is such a nascent space right now that unless we regulate, and still it's so impactful, like it's impacting every industry, and there's no longer an option to just opt out. The genie's out of the box, the Pandora's box is open, and everything is out there. And rather than picking up the pieces, you're going strategically and cutting off, okay, this is what we need, this is the transparency, this is the policy, these are the regulations. So you're laying out the roadmap for a lot of governments to follow. So I cannot, I cannot stop raving about how important your work is and how important it is to keeping us all safe and all of humanity across the board. So one thing, what I like about your approach is that you're not only just doing the work, you're empowering others as well. You do run these policy clinics, because I'm so interested in those. And I do want to hear, how do those work? How does one get in? Like, what do you teach? What do people walk away with learnings? Could you share a little bit more about that?
Love to, because that's one line of work we feel the most proud of. We are a independent research and education organization at heart. That's our mission. So the clinics came about 4 years ago, again, with this like looking around the room and saying, like, who's not in the room, whose voices we're not hearing, and why not? So when we asked the question, why not, we saw that AI policy training with a human rights focus was not available at all. So if you didn't have this, like, you may want to learn more about AI policy, but there wasn't any possibility to learn it as a training, right? So that was one thing. There were a few at the time AI policy training, but it was really commercialized, expensive, commercialized for-profit training. And there were a few shorter ones, like a 2-day boot camps, etc. That was incredibly expensive, and in locations where many people couldn't afford to go, or couldn't afford the time to go and get that training. So we decided that we would run this AI policy training virtually, so everyone around the world could join us free of charge. So even if you didn't have the financial means to get this training, you could. And also, do not take any government or corporate money. So as a head of a nonprofit yourself, Mia, you would know what that means in terms of finding how challenging that makes funding, but that also keeps our independence as a nonprofit. So we try to get funding from foundations or donors who trust us, trust our goals, and then use that money to turn around and provide this policy training free of charge. We had an incredible interest in this work. And just to give you an idea, 4 years ago, our first clinic was 7 people. Last semester, the fall 2023 semester, we had 320 people. This semester, we're now in week 2 of this 12-week semester period. We have more than 350 people in our clinic, representing more than 82 countries right now. So every single continent is represented, as well as many different countries, many different backgrounds. And we try to keep the backgrounds diverse as well. So we have civil society advocates, community advocates, lawyers, academic researchers, technologists, policymakers, practitioners that are working in their own governments, in their own country governments, coming together to this community, learning what AI policy around the world is, one of these major AI policy frameworks, building AI policy research and analysis skills, but being part of that community as well that they can always tap into. So we have more than 1,000 people who have gone through our clinics one way or another, that they can always do collaborations on the side as well. So we're very excited about those clinics. And what happened over the years, because we're now in year 4 of running these clinics, our participants finished the first clinic and they were like, we want to do more. We want to do more towards human rights and democratic values and AI policy. What else are you offering? How else can we get, continue to engage? We added an advanced clinic. We had graduates from that who are still asking the same questions. We added a policy group. So we now have this 3-tiered, 3-layered clinic structure. So you can spend a year and a half in training with us and go through this. And really, we're looking at building capacity, building the future AI policy leaders across all these countries, all these communities, who have that shared human rights and democratic values language in their work, and hopefully embedded in their work as well.
Amazing. This is so incredibly powerful, and I cannot stop repeating that, because this is how you build pathways, right, into the space. Because for a lot of people, and you said the keywords, that having a shared terminology, a shared vocabulary, having these shared values, and making sure that it's accessible, that we're giving different pathways for people to enter. Because governments by themselves are or large organizations, governments are black boxes. So unless you're an insider, it's hard to figure out what's going on inside, let alone influence change. And what you're giving people is this map to, okay, and the skills and the resources. This is how you can influence things. This is how you can be part of the solution. This is how you can bring your values into practice.
Similar to how you started, why you started Women AI Ethics in the first place, because people are saying, we want to talk to women working in this space, we just can't find them. Are you serious? So we were talking to policymakers, and they're saying, we want to connect with the communities, we want to connect with diverse voices in policymaking. We just can't connect with them. And we're like, hey, here's a whole group of people and their connections and their communities who you can talk to, tap into their experiences. So I think the mentality why we started this clinics is very similar to why you started Women in AI Ethics in the first place. And I see a question on the commitment and how to apply very quickly before we run out of time. Let me explain that as well. So we run clinics as academics, similar to academic calendar, September to December, January to April. We're in the spring clinic right now. Our applications for fall clinic, which is going to start in September, we're going to open those applications around May, June timeframe. So if you're not following us on LinkedIn, or if you're not subscribed to our weekly AI policy newsletter, please do. And I should probably give you the link to the newsletter as well. And you'll see, like, whenever we announce that, and then there's an application process. We go through the reviews. For example, for 350 that we admitted, we received more than 1,200 applications globally. And then it's a 12-week program, all virtual. And the time commitment is we run live lectures on Mondays, and we offer like two alternative sessions on Mondays to be able to accommodate for time zone differences. And then another session on Friday, and in between you have individual and group assignments. So I would say 2 hours live sessions per week, and then whatever assignment, how long you need to take for the assignment itself. But watch the space, follow us on LinkedIn and newsletter, and you'll be able to see the applications when we open again.
Yes, we did. Gabby will drop a link to your site, CAIDP site, so people can follow you. I was hoping to see your cat on the call today because mine is very, very interested. My little assistant, our furry assistant, is very interested in joining us today. So he will probably jump in here with his own opinions in a few minutes. Very informed opinions, by the way. These are based data-backed opinions. And so just hang in there. I have a question for you about that. The people, I've started marking this off. We do have 5 minutes, and I just want to wrap this up at least by saying thank you so much, first of all, for joining us. This has been incredibly powerful. Thank you for all the work that you do. Folks are asking about, they always look at the highlight reel, right? That's what we do. We are in the social media world. Everybody sees the glitz and the glamour. Oh, look at how fancy this is and how wonderful that is. Big names and such. But what you have laid out is pretty much, and thank you also for talking about how women in AI ethics also we follow such similar pathways, that we started with an idea. We wanted to do something good that helps everyone, elevates the women's voices, in your case, elevates inclusivity, and people who are doing the work, which is why our community is so diverse. Women in AI ethics, we bring in policymakers and regulators, and we bring in people who are also doing product work. Like, that's the kind of community we need, and that's the kind of community we should be building, not just let's let the male engineers decide whatever the heck they want to put out into the world tomorrow, right? I mean, that's not the way we want innovation to work. We want it to be thoughtful. We want it to work for everyone. So I'm so glad our paths converged here. I'm so glad you're part of our community and part of our advisory board. I can't wait to do amazing things with you. Before we jump into Q&A, I just wanted to give a big thank you again so much for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure. Anytime.
Appreciate you so much. Okay, so we have a few minutes. And again, for those of you who missed it, Merve has very kindly agreed to stay with us for extra few minutes. So we will start taking questions now. But for those of you who are not familiar with Women in AI Ethics, we are a volunteer-led, donation-supported organization. Merve volunteers her time, I volunteer my time. A lot of women and men also, our male allies and non-binary folks, volunteer their time to make this happen. And so we are limited in the programming that we provide, but wherever possible, we try to provide free programs, resources, because we do want more people to be included in this AI discussions, design, deployment, and making sure this, the technologies are being developed and designed responsibly. However, we do rely a lot on donations and your support, so please do. Gabby can share a link where you can get more involved, and also a link to our mailing list. Now jumping into the Q&A with Merve. So what's the first question? Hello, first of all, congratulations on making such a huge impact in the innovative landscape. Thank you. My name is Sharola Odipo, the founder of Women in AI Africa. We love the work you're doing. Welcome. I'm inspired by what both me and Merve are doing with your years of expertise in affirmative action, especially in the innovative space. Would you mind holding a hand through this journey by offering mentorship? Okay. We did start a mentorship program. And I believe you were one of our mentors as well, right, Merve? And there were so many amazing women. So during the pandemic, there were so many women who were struggling to figure out, like their offers were rescinded, they lost job opportunities, they couldn't, their admissions, they couldn't get into universities, university started shutting down. So then women like Merve and others stepped up and started mentoring other women in this field. That program is currently on hold. Again, always funding reasons, right? We only have so much time and we want to continue to support this community, but we'll keep you posted as soon as we restart the program. But I have to say, our mentoring program was one of the most successful programs. And I still get asked questions about when we can restart it, but believe me, I'm working on it. And then let's see the next question. Where to start this change in an industry where there isn't appropriate enough regulation in the country? I think that is in analytics team could be a to-do way to start, but I don't think it's enough. This is from Patricia. She has, they haven't mentioned where they're joining us from, but Merve, do you want to take that? Where should people get started?
I think different answers, or maybe like complementary answers, right? So if you're already in the industry, I would say it might become lonely at times to do this work within your organization. So definitely look for allies within the organization, whether that is your peers in different departments, whether that is senior management, that you can get more support. But it really starts within the organization with awareness raising of why this is so crucial. AI ethics and embedding trustworthy AI is so crucial, not only for the organization, but for your customers, for the bottom line. So there's actually a business case that we can talk for long hours of why this actually makes sense, why this actually makes business sense, in addition to social sense as well. So building that community within your organization, finding your tribe, building awareness, and then thinking of a roadmap within the organization is one thing. Second is definitely connecting with your elected officials, whether that is local or national level. You can, at city level, wherever you're living in your local locality, you can start this work. You can connect and write to your elected officials in the parliament and federal government, whatever it is, but make them hear that you want change. Because in policymaking, there is so much happening, so many fires burning that lawmakers, policymakers are focusing on, unless there is this like growing demand for change, growing demand for AI policy, AI regulation. It is deprioritized, right? Whenever there's more requests, more pressure, then that is when the lawmakers start paying more attention. So trying to work with your communities, civil society organizations, with your own local communities to grow that change is also important.
Thank you so much. I feel like that's such important advice. And it's a question on many people's minds, right? Because for folks like us who've been doing this for a while, it seems intuitive. Okay, these are the things we need to do. But if you're just getting started looking from the outside, but at some point, I have to say, we were all on the outside looking in until we decided that we no longer want to be on the outside looking in. We want to be inside making the change. And if that doesn't, we want to make sure that we are always pushing people who are in positions of power to do better, because they can do better. This is a choice. And we are just reminding them of their obligation and commitment to the rest of humanity. That's essentially what it comes down to. So I will pause for a second and just say, maybe we can stop the recording now and then jump into just the live